Stay Sane with Jane, the show that helps you and your business to thrive, not just survive. Tune in each week as Jane connects with guests in the wellness, business and publishing worlds, bringing you the most up-to-date training, techniques, healing and guidance for growth, mindset and motivation. Each session includes a magical guided meditation led by Jane or one of her special guests. Here's your host, Jane Scanlon. Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Stay Sane with Jane. So today we are interviewing Sassy Smith, who is a qualified coach, trainer and speaker. But in 2015, she discovered that she has aphantasia. I hope I've said that right. Realizing that visualizing wasn't just a concept that came as a shock and led her down a path to research this condition and some of the other conditions which are associated with it. So we're going to be talking about how some people can't access their inner world, and Sassy's going to help us with all of that.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to today. So tell us a little bit about you, about who you are, and we'll get onto business and work afterwards.
Okay, so yes, so I'm Sassy Smith, and I am the Aphantasia coach and founder of the Aphantasia Academy. And I've been coaching probably for most of my life, because I've managed people, and that's part of that role. And I qualified as a coach some time ago, and I love coaching, and I absolutely love the transformational powers of coaching. But it never worked for me. And I always thought that was a little bit odd, that I could coach other people and get transformational change. But when I worked with coaches, it didn't work. And I really struggled to understand that.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So you worked with lots of different coaches, but it didn't quite ever work for you.
No. And I spent a lot of time thinking, is it me? Are they just not very good coaches? Is it their coaching program? There's something missing here. And it was only when I discovered in 2015 that I couldn't access my inner world that I realized exactly what the problem was. It wasn't them. It wasn't me. It wasn't the coaching programs. It's just that my brain works in a completely different way. And so traditional coaching tools just weren't working for me. And
so explain to the audience, what do you mean by, when we're talking about this inner world, what do we mean by it? What are we talking about?
So most of the time when we're talking about our inner world, we're talking about the thoughts that just come to us. So often we're talking about our inner critic, or those limiting beliefs that we have. We talk about the inner world from the point of view of being able to access our memories of the things that have made us how we are now, our patterns of behavior, our, life events. And we talk about being able to see our past, so visualizing our past, or visualizing a new future. And what I discovered in 2015 was that I have aphantasia, and aphantasia is the inability to visualize on demand. So we can't create mental images.
Yeah.
But what I've also discovered as a result of looking at that is that I also have something called anoralia, which is I have a silent mind, which when we talk about meditation, and I'm sure we're going to get onto it because you and I both love meditation.
Yeah.
Will kind of become a bit clearer as to kind of the impact of anoralia with meditation. But I also have something called severely deficient autobiographical memory, and that means I can't access any of my life memories. I can tell you various facts and figures about them and general knowledge and things like that.
Yeah.
But I can't step into and relive any of my memories. So my inner world is like it's behind a door that I can't access.
Mm.
And so when you're doing coaching to try and change the inner world in order to affect change on the outer world, so for example, trying to change those limiting beliefs, it's really challenging for people like me who can't actually hear them. We don't know what those limiting beliefs are because they're not kind of popping into our mind every 5 minutes.
Yes.
We're not good enough. We're not worthy. They're there in our subconscious. We can't get to them.
So they're still there, but they're showing up in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like, oh my gosh, you are amazing. You've got no inner critic. You've got no negative thoughts in your mind. So it's not that.
No, they're there.
They're
I just can't hear them. I just don't.
You can't.
I can't access them. So that's really challenging.
You can't see them internally. Sassy's frozen for a second. When we're back in the room.
Yeah, so I can't. So, for example, talking about some of the coaching tools that we use, we often will ask somebody why it is that maybe they haven't achieved a goal that they've wanted to achieve.
Yes.
And we'll ask them to think about, well, what were you thinking when you were trying to do that? What were the thoughts that you were having that stopped you? And if you ask me that question, I'm going to think, I don't know what the thoughts were that I was having that stopped me from doing that. I know I was having some thoughts. I must have been, but it's much harder for me to get to those things.
Yeah.
And I
but
think
if we shift back to childhood, school, I'm just wondering if now you're looking back, can you even access those memories where you were like, okay, that's why I wasn't good at so and so at school?
No, I can't access those memories at all. If there was a really good story about something that's happened in my life, I remember the story.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the memory. I have no access to the memory. So it's really hard for me to identify patterns of behavior based on my past that have created the now.
Yeah.
It's really challenging. It's possible.
It is possible? I'm thinking, this is impossible. How could you do it?
So it takes a really skilled coach who understands, okay, I need to work a little bit differently here, and to understand that traditional tools and methods just not gonna do it.
I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So you are not. We are all miracles, but you're not a miracle in the fact that you have no blocks or repeated patterns or anything like that. You just don't remember them. That's quite good though as well, isn't it?
Well, there are some advantages to having aphantasia and to having anoralia and SDAM. For example, I never have to relive a traumatic event ever again. I'm never going to see it. It's never going to come back into my thoughts. My memory-wise, I'm within a very short period of time, I will have forgotten it unless I remember a story about it.
Yes.
The flip side is my body absolutely remembers it, 100% remembers it. And I think, and that's where some really therapeutic work comes in, and somatic work comes in to try and remove the negative energy from your body, or that feeling of trauma that's in the body. But we'll never
both work very holistically, aren't we? We love kind of holistic, whole mind, body, soul. And yeah, if we go by the things we've learned and different methodologies, our emotions do get stuck in the body. Yes. Tension, illnesses, dis-ease, it's all trauma, thoughts, patterns, you know, and lifestyles and externals as well.
But when you look at traditional sort of therapy, and I'm talking about counselling based therapy, and that's very much not always, but most of the therapy based. So, for example, cognitive behavior therapy is going to be looking at, well, what the thoughts that you're having that are creating these emotions that are these, you know, behaviors for this outcome. And so it's really challenging to work with a therapist and say, I've no idea what the thoughts are. B,
I can't remember the argument. My body can.
I'm feeling this. I'm having so I mean, the reality is, coming up for nearly 2 years ago now, I had a massive breakdown. I had a nervous breakdown, and I use this expression a lot, and people often say to me, I don't understand what it means, but I would wake up at 3 a.m. and I would know that my brain was spiraling. I would know that my brain was going through that process of ruminating over everything.
Yeah.
Couldn't hear it, but I could feel it happening in my body.
Yeah.
And
was therapist, it like a bit of a panic attack?
So I had panic attacks. It brought on panic attacks for me. And I have had panic attacks before. So when I was growing up, my knees used to dislocate all the time. And I only even have to think about that for me to feel that in my body of what that felt like. And that can in itself bring on a panic attack. But the feeling that I'm getting when I'm spiraling, that kind of panic attack that I'm getting when I'm spiraling, it was really different. And I knew it came from some sort of stress, overwhelm, burnout, these thoughts, but I couldn't access them.
So what, and I think when was this burnout?
So that was about two years ago. And at that point, I was kind of doing traditional coaching. And mainly then I was, ironically, mainly working with women suffering from stress and overwhelm.
Yeah, but what?
and I went through saying, you know, I just was ignoring all of the signs in myself that this was happening to me.
And I suspect the signs are much harder for you to hear, because you can't see them internally, you can't hear them internally. So is it a physical, like you have to now feel into your body more?
And that's definitely what it was. I could feel it. My chest was getting much tighter. I had a brain fog. Say the 3 a.m. waking up full of adrenaline and cortisol and being able to feel that in my body should have been the sign to tell me to just, you know, chill. But I didn't, you know, we never listen to ourselves, do we? And so I had a full-blown nervous breakdown. And I went to see a therapist who had never heard of my conditions and had no idea how to work with me, and tried to work with me in very traditional ways that in the end, I think he was getting just as frustrated at those sessions as I was. And I think we both pretty much checked out. That. But I found myself tapping without knowing what tapping was. I'd kind of seen it a bit, but I didn't really know much about it. And I found myself doing lots of things like body stroking. I would catch myself like almost like I was trying to brush the energy out. And I realized that I was doing things to try and remove the energy of this from my body without consciously knowing that was what I was doing. And then it was the middle of winter, and I decided that I would start dipping in the sea, which I know you also love. And that was a massive,
we've dipped a couple of times together, haven't we?
Yeah. And that in itself was a big thing for my recovery. But the flip of it was that I realized that nobody out there seems to know how to work with people like me. And there are lots of people like me, 3.9 to 5% of the population. Now, bearing in mind that they think that adult ADHD is 2.4% of the population. That was the last thing I read from the WHO's website, the World Health Organization's. That's a lot of us that need coaches, therapists, healers who understand and can work with us. And that was when I thought, if nobody's gonna do this, I'm gonna have to do it myself.
I'm gonna have to set up the business.
I'm just gonna have to do it. So I trained to started my training to be a counsellor. And
that brings me on to the question: how did you get started in the field? So we've kind of covered some of this in our chat. So tell me, how? So then you started a counselling.
Yeah.
course.
So
was it all based on traditional methods anyway?
It was. Yeah. Well, it is. And so what I realized was that I needed to learn it so that I could learn how to adapt. And that's what I've done with all of my experience of coaching. I looked at all of my coaching experience and thought, okay, how do I adapt these methods for people like me? And that's what I've done. And so I stepped away from coaching myself, and now I train coaches. Actually, interestingly enough, on this latest round, I've got 3 hypnotherapists, which has been really interesting, and kind of learning about, how.
Of course, hypnotherapy. So also, I mean, obviously I know what you do. I've seen the website, I've seen the offers, but the people listening, they haven't seen the offers. And so these hypnotherapists, well, what on earth are you doing with them, Sassy?
So I'm a bit of a science geek. And so I teach what's happening in the brain. So you get the neurobiology of these conditions and what makes my brain different to somebody who's neurotypical. So you get an understanding of that, the sort of the brain chemistry, also the research into these conditions. So I teach about 5 conditions. I teach about aphantasia, so not being able to create images in your mind; anoralia, the silent mind; SDAM, severely deficient autobiographical memory, so not being able to access memory; alexithymia, which alexithymia is linked to lots of other conditions, including the ASD, so the autism spectrum disorder, and some ADHD. And alexithymia is the inability to recognize and name emotions in other people, but also in ourselves. And lots of people with aphantasia report really struggling to access their own emotions, and I'm one of those. So I can do top end and bottom end emotions, as I like to call them. So real joy at one end and anger at the other, but everything in between is quite hard for me to access, that kind of middle ground. And so I've long said that I surface skim my emotions. And it's only when I learned about alexithymia and about how often when people are accessing their emotions, it's through something they're seeing in their mind, and it's those memories and it's all of those things that I can't access. And so I teach all about that. The good thing about alexithymia is the only thing that I teach about that you can change. Alexithymia can be improved, and it can be learnt behavior. So you can unlearn the behavior. So that's really good. But I also teach about, the last one is called dyskinesia. And dyskinesia is multi-sense aphantasia, basically. So that means not only do I not have an inner ear because I have a silent mind, and I don't have an inner eye because I have a blind mind, but I also can't recreate in my mind smells, tastes, any of my senses. So when people say to me, "Oh, that
It's
smells,"
me looking up, thinking, "Can I do that?"
so if I was to say to you and to everybody listening now, I want you to imagine that you've got a lemon in your hand, and you bring the up to your nose and you just sniff the lemon, and you can probably be creating now the smell of a lemon in your mind, that citrus smell of a lemon. And if I was to say to you, if you imagine taking a great big bite out of that, you potentially are now getting that sharp kind of acidic taste in your mouth. Now, you may be salivating because, just, if you like a lemon, maybe the thought of biting into a lemon is kind of making you salivate. But if you're able to access all of your internal senses, you're recreating the smell and the taste of a lemon in your mind.
I could not. I could see the lemon. I could not smell the lemon. I could not taste the lemon, but my body did a shiver of the bitter thing.
Yes.
But I did get more saliva in my mouth.
Yeah. So your brain was working on this. So that means that your visualization was so real that your body was reacting to that as if that was happening.
Yeah.
And that's one of the really interesting things about aphantasia. But which, before I go on to that, I just want to say, so if somebody said to you, "Oh, that smells like Christmas,"
yes,
could you think, "Oh, that's cinnamon and all those smells of cloves or whatever, Christmas pines"?
Yeah, when you said it, I was like, "Oh yeah, I've got some essential oils that people say that about," and I like getting them out around Christmas because it's the oranges, the cinnamons, the clove, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And trees, eucalyptus, and
So it's also, I think, for some people, having that inner sense memory of somebody, they talk about, I don't know, their mum's perfume or the way a loved one smelled, or, and there are some people can recreate that smell in there. They remember it as if they're smelling it in their mind.
Yeah.
Which sounds very weird, but just to me anyway, because I can't do any of that. But what I wanted to say about the body-brain, that brain-body-brain connection that was just happening for you when you were salivating then. One of the tests that's been carried out on aphantasia, I think, is incredibly interesting. And I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit off topic here, but it's just, I had to share it.
Yeah.
People who can visualize, when you're asked to imagine yourself as if you are in a darkened room, your pupils naturally dilate. They do it on the outside because your brain thinks that you're in the dark. And likewise, if you imagine yourself in a bright room.
Well, I'm going to test that out with a mirror. And then what? You open your eyes, looking straight in the mirror.
Well, if you did it with your eyes open. So if you do it with your eyes open, so visualizing with your eyes open, picturing in your mind with your eyes open that you are in a bright room or a dark room, and that will happen to your pupils. Whereas people with aphantasia, just nothing. There is no change at all. And so it might be a tool at some point in the future that we'll be able to test aphantasia by, to see whether or not people can do it, which would be really interesting.
That's interesting. And I was even thinking just then, can I visualize with my eyes open? I always close my eyes.
But can you? Can you project an image?
Can I think of an image of that lemon? No. And when I shut my eyes, I can, though.
Yeah, some people.
Something weird happened to me actually this week. So I was playing a board game,
Yeah.
And it's one that I'd seen before. I'd played before, couldn't quite remember it. And it didn't fill me with joy, shall we say, that we were going to play this again. It was something called Dixit, and it's these cards, and all the cards are different drawings, and you have to describe the picture without describing it.
Okay.
If this makes
Yeah,
any
yeah,
sense at
yeah.
all.
No, I'm with you.
And then everybody puts a card. So say you say helping others, and your card is a little ant with a flag, and there's lots of ants behind. So you decide, actually, that's helping others. That first ant is helping everybody else go in a straight line. So then everyone else around the table has to look at their cards and see if they have a card that could be described as helping others.
Okay.
And then you put it all down, and then you flip them over, and you basically get points whether you can, whether people guess right or not, basically.
Yeah.
And I was looking at these cards, and it just blank head, and I was just so literal, like ant with a flag, line of ants, like I don't know. And everyone else is coming up with these great things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I so logical sometimes? But other times I've got this, I have got this huge imagination, but I look at these cards and I would just say what I could see. I couldn't make up a phrase for it, and it was driving me crazy in the kind of pre-game. Anyway, I did win, which I was very pleased about, but I didn't show off. But my mind was just absolutely blank. There was just nothing happening in there. And yeah, so I've had like a teeny window into what that blank mind can be. It's like,
So interestingly enough, with anauralia or anaural thinking, it's another way. So aphantasia is image-free thinking, and anaural thinking is thinking without sound. What's interesting is that for some people that is total silence all the time, full stop. But for me, I do have internal dialogue. I don't have internal monologue, and it's the monologue which is the kind of you're not in control of the thoughts.
yes.
Whereas internal dialogue, I can have a conversation with myself in my head, and that's how I work out problems. That's how I so in that instance, I potentially would have been doing the same thing. Well, how do I describe that? That's just a line of ants with a flag. Okay, so I potentially would have been doing that. But one of the ways that I like to describe it is, as you and I are having this conversation, I am 100% fixed on you and this conversation, which possibly might have been one of the reasons why coaching was something I loved, because it's all about, focusing on and active listening. And I am only hearing my voice as I'm talking and your voice as you're talking, and that's it. So there's not a shopping list in my head that's happening, or, oh God, don't forget to get dog food, or those thoughts that I am very conscious that when I'm having conversations with people, often their brain is doing other things.
Yes.
And it's quite interesting to me that happens, because I often wonder how anybody gets anything done with all that noise, with everything that's going on, all those images and all those noises and voices. And somebody told me that as well as their thoughts, it's like there's a radio playing in the background, and I was like, how do you cope?
Oh yeah, sometimes I get that, the radio, and it's a song on repeat.
Well,
it's
earworms.
awful. That is.
Yeah.
You can
So
wake
an
up.
earworm, that can give you my top tip for dealing with an earworm.
Yeah.
You have to
Is that what they're
start
called?
the song and you have to sing it all the way through, all the words. And if you don't know the words, learn them, because it's your brain is trying to find the next line. And it doesn't know the next line, so it keeps going back to the beginning.
Yes.
And that's why you get caught in those earworm loops, because it's like any problem that we give our brains to fix, our amazing computers. We give them this problem to solve, only it can't find the answer. And I currently have a song living in my head rent free. And it's me singing the song. It's my voice singing the song. And that is the only time when I get what I call an intrusive thought. That's the only time, whenever it's an earworm. And I don't get them very often. But they can happen for me. And then I have to go and learn the song in order to get shot of it. So that's my top tip for everybody listening. When you get an earworm, on purpose, sing it all the way through. And if you don't know, learn the words.
Like it. In fact, before we go to that question, a little bit more about how you started in the field, but more about, so you've set up the company, you've set up the academy, you've created a program. Is it one program that you use to help other coaches and workers in the kind of wellness industry, or broader than that, to help work with clients, people who can't access the inner world?
Yeah, so it's one course which is over 5 modules, which is over I think probably this time around going to be 8 weeks. I've just run a beta course, and they recommendation to kind of add a bit of a gap in the middle for relearning, or not relearning, but reflecting.
Yeah, I call it what do I call it? I call it review and reflect.
Yes,
and
brilliant.
refine, that kind of thing. Yeah,
I might pinch that.
all right, you can.
And so there's 5 modules, and in each of those modules you learn about the condition, you learn how to recognize it in your clients, you learn about the research into it, you learn about the neuroscience, and you learn some practical tips that you can apply immediately, either with a client or things that you can suggest to your client that they do immediately to help them. And then I also do a live coaching, group coaching. See, I still think I'm a coach. I still do a group. I am. Or I'll always be a coach. A group training session where I actually then do some practical. Okay, so now you've learned about it. How do we apply it in the real world? Yeah. And that is very much then based on each different thing. So, for example, goal setting, we'll look at, well, how do you do goal setting for somebody who can't see the past or the future? And how do you help somebody like me who out of sight, out of mind is a very real thing? So how would you help somebody like me to make sure that those goals remained visible and that I could achieve them? So it's about applying those tools. And I think that the things that I teach it's not just, I focused mainly at coaches, but it's not just for coaches. It's anybody who is working with somebody to help them to affect change in their life. Yeah. However you're doing
it. Could go into the corporate world and teach people as well, couldn't you? Yeah, it's not just the wellness industry.
No. It's about thinking about teaching, because a lot of teaching now, particularly in maths. So I've been told. I was never blessed with children.
But listen, I'm doing year 7, which is the first year of secondary school in the UK. I am doing that math because I sit down with my daughter. She's on the ASD spectrum, and we're both dyslexic, and God, I'm probably something else as well. And we're sitting there, and all I can say is, Thank God for the lockdowns, right? Because otherwise I'd have done no prep work, right?
Yeah.
But because I did homeschooling, I started doing kind of relearning maths and
Yeah.
English at that stage, because otherwise I'd be stuffed,
Yeah.
because the maths is on a different level.
Yeah.
I mean, the language, what they're asking, what they're this, that. So yeah, what have you heard?
Well, that there's a lot of work the problem in your brain, see the
Yeah.
blackboard, write it on the blackboard, work it out in your mind, see yourself working it out in your mind. Well, I couldn't do that.
No, I can't see that in my mind either.
No,
No.
it'd be absolutely impossible for me to do a longhand calculation in my brain as if I had a blackboard in front of me.
Yeah.
Give me a piece of paper, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But I think there's an awful lot of that, of visualization used in schools now. Also, when we think about English, teaching children English and about creative writing. Now, people who have aphantasia, unfortunately, it's often called that said that people with aphantasia don't have an imagination, and that's not true. We've all got very active imaginations, and we can be incredibly creative. I mean, you've got the head of Pixar is aphantasia. The animator who did The Little Mermaid, Ed Catmull, I think his name is. He has aphantasia. So it's not that we're not creative, but we're not particularly that interested. I'm speaking for all aphants, and I know I shouldn't, but
yeah,
statistically speaking, we're not that bothered by the descriptive stuff. And we're not that bothered by the descriptive stuff because we are not creating an image of what's happening in a book. Right? When we read a book, we just want to know what happened, the storyline. That's all we're interested in. Everything else is just kind of fluff. And so it can be challenging for children with aphantasia to write creatively, to write really descriptively, if they're not aware that they're not interested in the descriptions, and they're going to have to work that little bit extra harder.
Yeah.
To use words that they really have no interest in. When I read a book, that's all I read. I just read the storyline. I'm not creating the film that goes with it. I have no concept of what the characters really look like. So when they're made into a film or a TV show, I'm never disappointed. Never disappointed.
So true.
Yeah, because I haven't created an image of them in my mind.
Yeah.
So it's I think it could potentially be challenging. So there is the potential to take the learning into schools if they haven't already done things to learn about this. I mean, knowing that there are links with some other conditions.
Neurodivergent now, aren't there? I mean,
yes.
Is there anybody neurotypical? Yeah, there's people pretending.
Probably not. Probably not.
But there's lots that can still fit in that kind of system, that box that was created so long ago by, well, it was created by men for men, for boys, wasn't it? School.
Yeah.
Women came along much later, but the framework was already there.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I mean, there are, in something that's still used today, in 1909, George Herbert Betts created this learning skills inventory. I think it was called the Learning Skills Inventory. And even then he was talking about the fact that not everybody could visualize. And some of his work today is still used around how we teach children, how we identify children's different learning styles. So it's not like people haven't known about this. I mean,
yeah, that's true, but they haven't implemented it because they feel like, I don't know, maybe they felt that it was minority and we're just going with the majority.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think Aphantasia didn't get its name until 2015. We've known about anaural thinking for a very long time, but anauralia as a name for it, 2021. SDAM,
Wow.
I think, was 2019.
You're amazing with figures, facts and figures.
Well, I am, because, and this is the thing, I can't access my autobiographical memory, but I've got really good semantic memory. And semantic memory is facts, figures, dates, general knowledge. That's why I used to be really good at quizzes. I say I used to be really good at quizzes
Yeah.
because, you know, I am a woman of a certain age now, and sometimes the brain just doesn't work at
Yeah.
all. And if I've got to answer something really quickly, speed has gone completely out of the window. My reaction time is way down. But if it's just general knowledge, that's how my brain works, and that's how the brain of a lot of people with aphantasia works. So we're really in our left brain, a left hemisphere. We're all in that words and language and facts and figures and maths, interestingly enough. And a lot of people with aphantasia go into kind of sciences or data-driven jobs because we can remember that stuff. I mean, I can remember telephone numbers from my first job when I was 17, the client's
Holy
telephone
cow.
numbers. Yeah, because I have to ring them all the time, and they're just kind of in there, you know. I could pull them out, but ask me to remember my wedding day, no chance. I can tell you some stories about my wedding day. I can tell you what I can remember from the photographs that I've seen of my wedding day.
Yeah.
I can, you know, I can show you a photograph from my wedding day and say, well, look, you know, this, that, and the other. But ask me to remember the day, to relive the day, to step into those memories of that day.
Yeah.
And I don't have access to them. The door is closed and I don't have a key for it.
Wow.
So they're there. They are there.
Yeah. So if we were to work together, what would it look like?
So one of the things that I am offering as a new add-on for this course, because one of the things that I've realized is that you all work differently. Everybody who's in this space works slightly differently. And so whilst I'm teaching you that there's no one size fits all, I have to understand that there's no one size fits all when it comes to the work that people do.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I have introduced to this course is that I will audit one of your offers and go through it with you to show you where you could easily adapt it, tweak it, change it, so that it would work for people like me, so that it would work for anybody who thinks slightly differently. And so that if you have a client like me, because like I said, there's more of us out there than anybody even knows,
Yeah.
that you would be able to, having done the course, being able to identify it. The key for the identification is that not everybody who has aphantasia even knows they have it. I always knew there was something a bit different, but I had no idea until I read the article about aphantasia that actually what I had was, you know, aphantasia, and that people could actually visualize, which blew my mind. Honestly, I just thought it was a concept. I thought it was just words. I thought if you asked me to imagine an apple, well, I know what an apple is. I've eaten an apple. I could describe an apple to you. That's what I thought people were doing in their heads. I didn't realize that they were actually seeing an apple. And some people could imagine biting into it and tasting it.
I can't get my head around that one.
So I would help you to make your work accessible, basically. So that's what working together would work. Be collaborative, and supporting you to be able to attract more clients. Who there may be people like me who do know they have it and they're really hesitant to work with coaches or healers or therapists again because it hasn't worked for them before. So that's how we would work together.
So do you do any coaching or mentoring or any courses for the people like you? Or do you, if they're like, look, no, I don't want to do the work. I work in an office or whatever, but I just want help being the best me I can possibly be. Do you work with those people, or do you, because you've now got this network growing, can you pass them down different avenues? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, so at the moment, I am not working with anybody on an individual basis because I'm focusing on the training.
Yeah.
But what I do is I refer them on to people who have taken the course, who do whatever it is that they need. So once you've taken the course and you've passed it, you basically get to go onto my website as an expert. And anybody with then these conditions can go and search on that list to find somebody who does what it is that they need. So if it's somebody who's having relationship problems, they could go and have a look and say, okay, that person is a relationship coach. They understand alexithymia, which is often a challenge in relationships. They're going to know how to work with us. They're going to understand that process. So that's what I'm doing. I realized that I wanted to be able to help everybody like me, but there's 395 million of us, and I can't help everyone. But if I can train other people to do it, then who knows how many people can be reached by that. And that's the key for me. That's what I wanted. That's why I'm doing the training instead of doing one-to-one. I'm never going to say no to one-to-one because I do love it. But I think for the minute, my calling is to, create a world for people like me to be able to have access to training and healing and any form of therapy that will work for us.
Fantastic. And I am on your website right now, which is www.aphantasiacoach.com.
Yeah.
And within it, you've got a tab for the Aphantasia Academy.
Yeah.
So evaluate your coaching skills and expand your client base by understanding aphantasia. And obviously, you've got all the other neurodivergence in there as well that you talk about, and how the brain works, which is amazing. And also, you've got lots. You've got resources, you've got the training academy. So I do suggest, audience, that you head on over there and have a good old look. And it's scrolling at the bottom. And if you are listening, watching on any of the platforms, there will be links to all of Sassy's work within the wording. So do have a good old butchers. So any advice or top tips for our audience, perhaps first for the people that don't have those conditions, to help us help them if we're working together, and then maybe something else.
Okay, so if you are working with a client and you are doing some form of visualization with them, so if you're doing meditation and guided visual meditations with them, and or you're using visualization as a tool to help somebody to see a goal. So for example, if you worked with people to help weight release, you might say something along the lines of, okay, I want you to imagine that you're seeing yourself in the mirror at the weight that you want to be. And that's used as a motivational tool, and
you can see the weight falling off.
All of that. If your client starts looking at you a bit blankly, if they don't seem to be getting excited about the fact that they should be seeing themselves at that weight, that's your first clue that they may not actually be able to visualize. And so it's about understanding and recognizing just if you're working with somebody it's just not quite working. If it works most of the time with your clients, and you've got a client it's not working with it, that's kind of a big flag there.
That's the bell. Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah,
ding.
that maybe they're not visualizing.
Differently.
Yeah. So many people don't know that they have aphantasia. Because nobody's ever heard of it. And like I said to you, there is this concept. It's just everybody thinks there's visualizing is just a word that people use and it doesn't really mean anything. And anybody you speak to who's got aphantasia will tell you that. I just thought it was a word. I didn't really realize it meant, pictures. And so they might not know that they've got it. So one of the things that I often ask people to do is describe something. So I might say, could you just close your eyes, and I'd like you to imagine that you're standing in a field and you're looking out across that field, and in front of you is a grey and white wild horse, and its mane is blowing in the wind, and it's so close to you that you could almost reach out and touch its nose. And behind it there are beautiful mountains and wild flowers, and the sun is beaming down and you can feel that warmth on your skin. Now, if you've got that image in your head, for some people it might be a photo, might be looking at a photograph. For other people, I've just made you create a film in your mind, and you can see the mane moving, and you could maybe touch and feel the horse. Maybe you could smell the grass and the freshness of the day and feel the warmth. If you do that with a client and they say, all I saw was black, that's what aphantasia is. I can think about that horse. I've ridden a horse. I know what horses are like. I know what a horse smells like. I know what a horse feels like. But I can't actually create that image in my mind at all. It's absolutely black. And so it's about doing a short, quick, could you close your eyes and describe, and then you talk through something like I've just done with the horse. And then if they go, nope, then there's your cue. And so for those people, it's about creating then that goal or that future with words, really verbally. And that's a good way to do it, because we're really good at talking.
Yeah.
As you can probably tell. So actually we would use a lot more words. So I use a lot of words when I'm thinking about, my goals and things like that. So that's, as I say, your top tip. It's all about recognizing that maybe something isn't quite working in the way that it does for everybody else. And could that mean that they're not visualizing, and they either know they're not doing it and they think that this is still going to work for them, or they don't know that visualizing is actually a real thing.
So what do we do then? So we've got this information, we've got this client who we've now, both of us know, can't internally visualize or smell or taste, touch, all of that kind of stuff, internal dialogues. How do we take them through our program or through a meditation?
Yeah, so a guided visualization, if your client knows that they have aphantasia and they are but they can be quite creative mentally, then sometimes guided meditation can work. I have worked with some amazing teachers that use guided visualization, and one of them was taking me through meeting my guide.
Yes.
And because I have read a lot, and I've always loved fantasy, science fictions type of books.
Yeah.
I automatically had that description of what I considered to be a wise woman based on the books that I've read.
On the books, yes.
Yeah. So although I couldn't visualize meeting my guide and my guide taking me by the hand and walking with me, I could create the concept of this wise woman and describe a wise woman. And so whilst I might not have been able to emotionally connect in that meditation because I wasn't experiencing what everybody else was experiencing, it didn't mean that I couldn't do it at all. But I know I have aphantasia. And so what she'll now do is on a start of a guided meditation, instead of assuming that everybody can visualize, she'll say, I'm going to do a guided visualization. If you are unable to create images, can you think about this, whatever it is that she's going to do? Can you imagine? Because I can imagine. I just can't create pictures with it. Can you imagine this? Can you feel this? Now, feel this works for people who don't have alexithymia. Can you feel this? So she gives kind of options and she's very upfront with it. And what I think is really great about that is that those people who can't visualize, but maybe didn't know they can't visualize at that point are getting a cue of, oh, so maybe there are people who can create images and I can't, but I can think about that. I can try and come up with something similar. Now, that doesn't work for everybody. I know a lot of people with aphantasia just find it a guided meditation just a complete turn off. And if I'm doing something with somebody who doesn't understand and hasn't adapted, I can switch off. Can like, oh, I'm out. The minute I do a training course and they instantly talk about, visualizing and listening to your inner thoughts, then, I'm usually out by that point because
I must say since our kind of first conversation about this, I think it was in the sea or on the beach. And since then, whenever I'm working with somebody and I'm about to take them through a guided meditation, I ask them, can you visualize internally? Can you do? Oh, and if it's a no, and I have had no's, I'm like, okay, can you feel?
Yeah.
Like, or can you this or that? And then we'll figure out something and then, work something around it. But it was a concept that hadn't really thought about before. But since just touching base with people before just assuming
that's it,
that they can visualize has helped a lot. I'm conscious of the time and I know you have an offer for our audience. And the offer is going to be in the text as well around this podcast. So
the neurodivergent coaching skills and practice program, although it says coaching, please do not be put off by that. There's an awful lot that you can learn even if you're not a coach, but if you work with other people, the skills are applicable. That's actually live, and there's a link that, as I say, will be in the notes that will give you a discount. So I'm offering anybody who's listening to this, what's my early bird amount, which is actually closed, but I'm offering that to anybody listening to this. So you would be able to access that course with a £100 discount.
Fantastic. And the link will be, like I say, somewhere within this.
Yep,
and is it the Academy join list? Or
well, If you're interested but you don't want to do it right now, if you join the waiting list, then when I do the next round, that gives the early bird discount for the next round, which will be in, where are we now? May, June, which will be July. So that's the next one. And that automatically, you get the early bird discount from that. The May one, it actually is already, by the time you're listening to this, is already live. But we're only a couple of days in, so you haven't missed anything.
You can jump
so you can join that late. Yeah.
Only a couple of days. You won't have missed anything.
No.
It's going to be at 8 weeks. So it's like you're two days in. So come on, peeps.
Yep. 2 days in, and an awful lot that you can pick up and transfer to whatever it is that you do, whether you're a coach, a healer, a therapist. It's all really useful information. And if you are a bit of a geek like me and you like to know what's happening inside people's brains, then it's really interesting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sassy. I've really enjoyed today. I've learnt lots, as I'm sure the audience has too. And like I say, everyone, go check out the Aphantasia Academy and Sassy Smith.
Thank you.
Stay Sane with Jane, the show that helps you and your business to thrive, not just survive.